Awesome.
Good, you're recording.
Yay. Oh my gosh. Is this really number 22? Did I see that? Like, we've been doing this now 22 times, almost 2 years.
Yes.
So when I first joined, we had like 4 people joining at a time. And I was like, wait, we need to do some more social media stuff. So let me get it out there and start posting. And it just grew. So we're just a bunch of volunteers who are really passionate about what we do. And it just kept growing and growing and growing. And so we'd love to talk about Agile stuff and anything related. And so to that end, if you know anyone who'd like to speak or you'd like to contribute yourself, please reach out to us. Next. So we have a couple of sponsors, and one of them, well, he's not on the call, I think, right now. Teal Mavericks. Mark Kruth is coaching, consulting, and training company, and is giving some Management 3.0 training in upcoming June and July. And those are both weekend workshops. So if you're you're doing this on your own time, it's going to be really convenient. So find a location closest to you and click that link, tealmavericks.com, for more information. Get 10% off your ticket for using CAJ. And of course, our other sponsor is ScrumDo. And ScrumDo is actually kind of a cool tool because it has built-in support for things that other tools you have to pay for, like SAFe, Framework, and Portfolio Level Kanban and Solution Planning Board. So if you haven't checked it out, go ahead and check it out at scrumdo.com for 30 days. And of course, this is all our own time and money, and you can buy us some coffee. We don't really use that for coffee. We just use it to help defray some of the tools and website costs of doing this on our own. So we'd love it if you gave us a tip and helped us on our continuing this Agile journey. So we've got 17 participants so far. Yay, and this is today's session, and we have got all kinds of amazing sessions coming up. Organizational change. What Mark Kruth is speaking. I forget all the speakers. Just go to our website because we've got lots and lots of exciting things. We just engaged Bob the VA, who's going to be speaking coming up soon. So look for that stuff on our website. Gary Walker's talking about disrupt or die. One of my passionate topics is org design. But without further ado, I would like to focus you back on Jay.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Heidi. Appreciate it. And I'm just jazzed to get to speak to a group like this. Obviously, this comes out of a place of passion, a desire to learn, and gosh, don't we love being around people like that?
Yes.
So should I share my screen?
Yeah, Jay, you can go ahead and take the screen share, and
let me see if I can
make sure it comes through nice and bright. And I'll just remind everybody while he's sharing a screen, put a link in the chat to slido.com. We'll be bouncing back and forth. If Jay has a question or wants to interact, we can do a poll on slido.com. The link is in the chat. Or you can go to slido.com, #CAJ22. And that way you can put in questions and answers and follow along with our polls today. So Jay, it's all yours.
Thanks, guys. So I'm gonna share something that really caught my attention. I guess about a year and a half ago, and it's building on a lot of other epiphanies and learning and experiments and mistakes. And so this is distilling an aspect of change that's been really an area of focus for me. Overcoming this concept of immunity to change, what you can do about it. And just as a disclaimer, if I really had the one answer to this, I'm thinking I wouldn't be an Agile coach. I'm pretty sure I'd be giving Warren Buffett and a few other people a run for their money. This is hard stuff, right? And that's actually what I'm going to talk about, is why this is hard stuff and harder than we think it is sometimes. I don't know about you guys, but I'm always. You ever meet somebody at a cocktail party and they'll ask you what you do, and if they don't know anything about tech, you're like, how do I describe this, right? And you start talking about Scrum, and that just bores them. And so I'm always trying to, like, how do I say this? I feel like if I ever can say that exactly right, then I'll know what I'm doing better than I do now. So here's one pass on this. So lately I've been telling people I get paid a lot of money to tell people stuff they should already know, but they don't. And they don't really listen to it, but sometimes they do. And sometimes I actually make an impact with those guys, but usually not. So that's kind of how I describe it now. That's been fun for me. Gets a laugh, and it's largely true. And this is the way this is probably what I aspire to be now, which is I help people cross the chasm between knowing and doing. And that's going to connect up with what we're talking about here. And so when I started my career in 2000, a professional coaching career in 2007, 90% of that was around telling people all this cool stuff that I learned, right? And so that was that knowing stuff. And I had this idea, if you just tell people cool stuff, they'll like do it, right? And then I noticed that wasn't happening a lot, right? You know, it was kind of like you talk about it, and then they go nod their heads and say, yeah, and then they wouldn't do it. So what do you do when people don't understand what you tell them? Or they're not, you know, that must be what it is, right? Because they're not doing it. Well, so what do you think you do next? I don't know how to do this. So can I ask you guys? What do you do more? What do you do next?
Repeat yourself.
Yes. You say it louder. You find new ways to say it, you know? And so if you look at the industry, a lot of people are trying to say this stuff in different ways. And we're in 2018, and guys, 60% of people are still trying to figure this out. And to me, this is a lot like, you know, we're all doing a diet, but we're not really losing a lot of weight. Some are, you know, and we look to those, right? We all kind of look around and we go like, wow, you're doing awesome, man. And I did awesome once, but we're not over here, and I don't know why. So what do we do about that? Right. And that's a big passion of mine. So, you know, the version 1 guys, they trot out their survey every year, and every year the top 3 culprits come back, don't they? Right. You know, it's like organizational culture. Yeah, that evil culture stuff, but we could just fix that. And then it's like, they resist the change, those stupid people, they just don't get it. And damn managers, they don't get it either. And so we run around as coaches a lot of times, or scrum masters, and we proselytize, we evangelize, and then stuff doesn't really change all that much, right? So, you know, I'd like to have an answer to this problem because it keeps coming up. So if you guys have looked at resumes lately for coaches, there's one that it makes me, because we want to change this stuff, and so you start to see what people are expecting or saying that they should be doing, and they say like they do cultural transformation. And knowing what I know now, I read that and I kind of go like, no, you don't. You know, I because you as you're going to see as we go along, this is really, really hard stuff. And anybody who claims to be able to, quote, transform cultures, I think are full of shit for the most part. I'm just going to be candid. At least I haven't seen it except in a couple ways. And so I think it's starting to sort of trivialize the challenge, I think, when we frame it this way. So in culture, the stuff is valid, right? Because the culture is doing things. You know, statistics say, you know, a lot of people are not just not working with you, but they're trying to stop you. You know, most aren't even in the boat. They're in the boat. They're just, you know, kind of not rowing. And some are engaged, but, you know, most aren't. And so this is coming up year after year, and we're getting into something pretty fundamentally human here, right? Okay. So there's a solution, and if any of you putting any of these tools into use today? Is anybody using ADKAR, Cotter? Are any of you guys using these right now?
Vaguely, but not to any successful extent. Like we can bring up those words, like especially the ADKAR model, but yeah, and we talk about teal and how we want to get there, but yeah, I don't really think they mean much to people, actually.
Yeah, to the average person it doesn't, but for the change leadership, I mean, these at least are trying to poke or give us some kind of poke a hole in this sort of resistance and give us some kind of direction of what we should do, and they all have part of the truth. I mean, there is truth in there, right? So, back to like when I first started coaching, I started with knowledge. Let me teach you this stuff, and then you'll go do it. Skipping tragically why and even giving you a context, right? And Cotter does the sort of same thing. He recognizes there needs to be some urgency, and so I call this the 3 blocks of change, which Carr's got it right. I think awareness, desire, and knowledge, but it turns out they're all kind of missing one tragic element. And that's the opportunity here I'll talk about. So here's the assumption we tend to make. And I certainly made this. Sometimes I still do. And that's that when we talk to people, they're largely sort of, logical, right? You tell them something and you give them data and they make good decisions. The reality is that organizations are made of meat, right? We don't like to think of it that way, but we're all meat. And what I mean by that is we've got all kinds of little things running around in our bodies and our brains that cause us to act in ways that, if you are completely rational, look crazy as hell, right? So we buy brands even when we can prove that they're horrible for you. We keep smoking even though everybody tells us that smoking is bad. We don't go to the gym. I mean, there's a lot of things we do. We hold on to relationships way past when they're valuable to us. So we do this really irrational, meat-flavored stuff. So, and one of the observations I love about this is that if we were mice, we'd be extinct. Mice are really pretty good about this. They do risk reward analysis better than we do. They're kind of like, if you think there's no cat and there's a cat, bad stuff happens to you, right? We can somehow sort of function making these really horrible decisions that harm us in the long term. And it sort of doesn't make sense, but there's a reason we do. And again, I'm going to get into that a little bit. All right. Let me pause here because I'm kind of rambling. This is all to set a little bit of context. So any kind of, what's your reaction here? I mean, does this resonate with you guys? Is it too abstract? I'm hitting a lot of theory, but so let's check in. So what are you guys thinking? What's your reaction so far?
Anyone? It resonates with me. Loss aversion, a special normalcy bias, all those things you're saying really resonate with my what I've experienced.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say, Jay, personally, they resonate for me too. And I've got a couple of comments over in the chat. I know you're not actively watching the live chat, but about 4 or 5.
I want to hear. Yeah. So what's some of the comments?
Yeah, 4 or 5 people are coming through saying you could spend half a day just on this one slide you have up right here. Your target.
No, I would posit you could spend an entire week.
Wow.
And to be honest with you, this area is where I spend a lot of my research and study time, is understanding this.
Nice.
But yeah, that's underneath all this. So let's go down deeper of what's going on with this. Okay. So Robert Keegan, I'm going to bring up a little more about him in a bit. He talks about all of us when we go to work, we have 2 jobs. Okay. So the first job that we show up with is, whatever it is we're talking about. This call right now, in the context, we're talking about job 1. So it could be any kind of problem you're trying to solve. Today, we are trying to decide a scaling framework that we should recommend for our organization, right? But there's a second job that the meat cares about. The meat side of you, and there's an acronym for it. It's called SCARF, but it's a quick way to remember. It says that we're unconsciously, we're paying attention to our status. Even on this call, I'm kind of like, okay, are they liking me? Am I talking too fast? Am I talking too slow? Am I smiling enough? So there's this meat side of us that are really paying attention to the social cues. So why does that happen? Well, the mouse only needs to worry about kind of functioning in a physical world where things are trying to eat it, and they need to eat 15% of their body weight a day to stay alive. We, on the other hand, are succeeded by functioning in social groups and not getting the lice picked from our hair and not getting beaten to death, by our family. So we care a lot about what's happening with each other. Okay, so hold on to that, because you need this to understand the change equation. Now, what happens if in a conversation this proportion changes? So job 2 is now occupying a big chunk of our energy. So what do you think happens to this outcome here? Not much, right? Right. And so think about this. Now you're talking about something you're trying to do in your organization. You're talking about, I don't know, let's say we've got a scrum master spread across 4 teams. They're going nuts. And you're trying to make the case to do something about that. And now the person who's making the decision, you're in a conversation with them. It could happen, and this is the real world for me. I was having this conversation, and every single response was why they couldn't do this and why they couldn't do that. And my tendency was to go give them more logical reasons to change. But what was really happening was that they felt like they were losing control. They didn't want to feel, this is my read on it when you dig deeper. They were putting all their energy into job 2. They're focusing on this stuff like, I want to feel respected and I don't want to be embarrassed. And I made this decision. And if I change it now, I'm going to look stupid. And by the way, you're just this damn coach. And so my status relative to you is going to be diminished if so all this stupid stuff happens, right? But it's real. And so we got to pay. I actually call this, I listen to this on calls when I'm coaching or when I'm working with a team. I call it bullshit per minute. So what's the BSPM going on in a conversation? And that's this. So if you can shift it to this, you get a lot more done. And if this is going on, you get a lot less done. And this is what happens with all the change we're trying to do, is that this job 2 comes online in a really big way. Okay, so who's sort of catalyzing change in our organizations besides us? Usually somebody's probably, an ex-developer. You ever had that experience?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So you get this person, they're really smart. They know every single thing in the system. And so they come from this world of, solving problems, and they see the world in a certain way. They see the world as stuff you can see and analyze. They see the job 1 side of the equation really well. So they see process, they see procedure, rules, skills. They get organizational reporting relationships, and they get this stuff, right? The problem with this is that they have absolutely no access to job 2, for the most part. I mean, some do in the moment, and when it's a low tension thing, we can talk about it. Now, on this job 2 quadrant, I'm not going to get into each of these, but I would say if you're in the business of change, you really need to know these individuals' work intimately, in my opinion. And so the rest I'm going to show you is a lot to do with this. So Edgar Schein, he really paints a really clear picture of what culture really is. So we stop talking about culture in an abstract way, and it gets very real. Ken Wilber is giving us tools to think about systems and change them. Keegan is actually the work I'm going to share with you today specifically. And Claire David Graves and Spiral Dynamics has influenced a lot of my thinking and change. So I'm pausing really quickly. So Isaac, anything else coming up that we maybe want to pause and address before we go forward?
No, these are good. I'm just seeing a lot of resonance and the resonance in the chat. Seems like you're hitting a lot of strings that people are experiencing and where they've been. It seems like a very real setting. I do have one question that if you wanted to, we could quickly hit.
Yeah.
Because it kind of ties in a little bit with one of the things you were saying. You were talking about Cotter and ADKAR, and one person that stated, sometimes there's little motivation in successful companies to go through the disruption and pain of true change. And maybe this is further in your presentation, but any suggestions on how to maybe overcome that? If there's somebody who's sitting on their laurels and saying, hey, we're good, why would we need to change? That's too painful. Let's just leave it where we're at.
I want to come to that in a certain kind of way. Actually, let me check one thing. So what you're saying, let me put it in different terms. Let me put it in ADKAR terms. So there's some awareness, but there's no desire. The desire isn't there.
Yes.
Right. What I'm going to show you in a little bit is that even when desire is intensely there, like really there, it's still hard to change. But let's acknowledge this. If somebody in the organization has not figured out a way to help people connect and what's in it for them and get some kind of connection with the desire, your change effort is dead, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, we don't even, I'm kind of powering past that piece one because it is the starting place, right? Is you've got to have that desire. And I don't have a simple answer on how you create that desire. But if you don't have that, the rest of what I'm going to share with you is sort of moot. Because you've got to get to that place, right?
Yeah.
And we don't. I will say this, what I've done personally is that I spend 90% of maybe 80% of my time when I'm not coaching but teaching, focusing on the why. I focus a lot on the why. I help people connect what's in it for them. So yeah, leaders are lousy about that. Because there's an underlying assumption, I think, which is we're going to go this way. Let's go do it. The board says I have to put something up every year. I don't know, but then there's not a real commitment to it, right? We see that.
Yeah, Jay, do you think that's because they don't need to? Like they're so used to telling people what to do that telling them the why is not important. They just expect people to execute because that's the way they should.
Yeah, I think that's there. I think it's back to Homo economicus over here. Sorry. Yeah, I mean, we have leaders that are just totally immune to the meat side of the equation. And so let me introduce the meat side here, which gets into this, right? So, and this is out of a combination of things, both Ken Wilber's integral transformation theory and as well Michael Spade's work in the Agile coaching, enterprise coaching sphere, which is just really introducing this meat side. And right, I think these people look at this side of the equation, the right side, these two quadrants, in terms of change, but almost completely oblivious to this side, right? So, what are my values here in this organization? What am I saying is important, and what am I doing? How do my actions reveal that, right? Keegan gets into this cognitive complexity. Are they even capable of thinking about these aspects of a system, independent of themselves? Can I move away from ego and do that? And then obviously culture. Which again gets down to basically our beliefs, the things that we think are true. So I think, yeah, they're operating from their current level of awareness, their current, cognitive complexity level. And that's the biggest limiter in change right there. It's the cognitive level of your leadership. So a lot of people that are kind of been doing this for a while, their whole focus is on how to change that. The Agile Leadership Institute is focused on what do we do to start raising the thinking level of leaders. That's sort of the root change that needs to happen, right? But this side of the equation here, man, I'm super interested in this, because these guys, when they look at what are some words, this is what, can we do a word cloudy thing? So when managers, when they look at this, what are some words you think that might come to their mind if you try to talk about these things? Can we do like a...
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, let's create a word cloud for that. We're going to do an open text response, and we're going to create a word cloud. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to, on the slido.com, everybody gets a chance to put this in. And how do you want to phrase that question there, Jay?
What words, if you were to sit there, imagine you sit down with a leader in your organization, a pivotal person, and you were to explain why all these other things in the transformation that we need to probably spend more time on this than that process stuff. What will be a word they might use to describe this stuff?
Okay.
I'd love to hear.
Okay, so I'm gonna throw that out there on the poll. We're gonna make that the active question right now. So if you're on our Slido, we're gonna build this. I'm gonna share my screen. So Jay, I'm gonna grab the screen share from you, and we'll share this. So go to slido.com, CAJ22, and put in what words do they use to describe this stuff, and we'll see those results come in live as you guys are putting them in. We've already got touchy-feely coming through. So yeah, toss in what words would they use to describe this stuff?
Kumbaya.
Ooh, I got that one time. That is my job.
Ooh.
I did get that. I did get that. And they basically, but what they meant was stay the hell out of my business.
Yeah.
Not important.
Yeah, if you want to, if you've already responded once, just click add response at the bottom again, because I had that.
Yeah, yeah, you can add more than one response.
Well, I like that, avoiding commitment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. So this is what Keegan talks about in his adult stage development, that these sort of human aspects of our social interaction, they're affected by it. We are affected by it. It's called the socialized mind, but we're not conscious of it. We're not directly conscious of it. We're not able to act on it. California science. Oh gosh. Oh, I want a screenshot. This is like so freaking rocking.
I like woo woo. That's great.
Yeah,
I'm not joking. I'm catching a screenshot.
Kumbaya, fluff.
Kumbaya. You know, I've actually heard kumbaya. Like, we don't come here. Like, delivering products is not where people come together and sing kumbaya.
Mm-hmm.
All that kind of stuff that you're talking about. Like, that's just too fuzzy for them.
It's too fuzzy. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's switch back. This is great.
Awesome. Yep.
You guys
I'll
are.
let you take the show back.
I'm showing me. I don't want to show me. Let me go back to my slide. Yeah.
Thank you guys for your feedback. That was good feedback.
Yeah, touchy-feely, theoretical, fuzzy, irrelevant, because they're problem solvers, right? They're operating at what's called the socialized mind, and they don't have access to this. They literally cannot think about it. So now there's the next question I'd like to ask. So I'd like to get a 1 to 10. 10 would be utterly focused on this side and only this side, and 1 would be maybe only focused on this side as a leader. So I'd like to know, in the aggregate for you, where do your leaders tend to fall between these two axes, right? Between the left and the right. So this would be the meat side, and this would be the technical sort of side. So I like to see where people are finding their leading play.
Yep, and for this one, while you guys are answering the poll, I'm going to leave Jay as the presenter, so you can see his screen. So you'll know 1 is on the left, 10 is on the far right. But that question's up now on slido.com. I'll post the link again in the chat, and that way you can jump in. Then once he's done, we will share the view. So go ahead and jump over there.
We're going to do a few more like this.
This is good. We've got 8 people have responded so far. I'll wait till we break. Well, we just got 10, 11. Last time we got 12. I'll let it hit 12 or 13. Good. Okay. I'll go ahead and take the ball now, and we'll share the results.
Okay.
Interesting.
Hey, I want to know who that one person is who's focused on the on the two.
Nice that, you know, when you, and you'll notice when people have organizations where people are balanced in that respect, it changes so much easier.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't even have a conversation when this isn't present around it, or you can't have a meaningful conversation.
Yeah.
Cool.
Wow,
Right,
look at that. 17 participants and very heavily weighted, 8, 9, and 10.
Yeah, we're averaging at 7.9. So yeah, way to the right. A little less to the right than I actually expected. So that's interesting.
All right.
Okay. So let's go back. Now we're gonna go just a little bit deeper into this concept. Great. So now there's another concept that Robert Keegan, and Keegan again he was a psychologist out of Harvard. He's retired now, but still doing a lot of good work. He in his book Immunity to Change, he talks about two different kinds of challenge, and one is the right side. We've already kind of talked about. That's a technical challenge. That's stuff that, you know, you can learn, you can apply sort of known techniques to change. And there's another concept called adaptive challenge. And these are the qualities of adaptive challenges. So people, they often resist it. You get there through experiment and trying things. But the one that really stood out to me was that the people with the problem do the work of solving it. You can't do it for them. So let's just look at this. Now I want to do another quick survey. We'll just keep this a little short. So imagine we're dealing with drug addiction, substance abuse. So over here on the one would be completely adaptive, and on the right would be completely a technical challenge, meaning I just need to educate people and use a process or some tool. So let's see where people think this might be. Can we run that again?
Okay, and so I just put the question up there, how adaptive, but again, the range is 1 to 10. I'll let you guys answer.
Well, so it'd be how technical.
How technical?
Yeah, because the 10 will be higher. So
Perfect.
what? You know, how technical is this challenge?
Love
with
it.
adaptive being the other side. Right?
Okay, and we'll wait till we get about 16, maybe 17 answers in.
Okay.
We've got 4 in so far. That link is in the chat if you want to jump over there and submit. We got 10. We're up to 10.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to share out. My son overdosed 3 times. He spent 2 years in recovery. So this is something I know a lot about. He's sober 8 years, so it's awesome, right? One of the things you'll see, especially in intervention programs and schools and things like that, they treat it almost completely as a technical challenge. They really do. Yeah, well, I'm really thrilled to see, the perception here, at least with this group, is that, this is very much an adaptive problem.
Yeah.
Usually in reality, the reasons for using are nothing to do with the drug itself. It's often problems with self-esteem. And let me say, fixing the problem absolutely has to be solved by the person themselves. You cannot do it by authority. It's impossible. Yeah, good feedback, guys. All right, so let's go. Let's pick. I want to pick one more, and then we'll kind of breeze through a few, just so you can make sure you guys get this concept. Let's do riding a bike. Learning to ride a bike.
Okay. So,
how technical is that challenge?
Yeah, so I'll just reuse. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to clear the previous answers. We'll just reset the results, and we'll use how technical again. So this one's bike riding, and we'll make that the active question.
Yep.
Here we go. All right, how technical? Riding a bike. Ooh,
so keep in mind, technical challenges tend to be something that resolved by practice, by repetition, basically an act of learning.
Yeah. So technical or adaptive? share out some of the answers. We got 13 people responding so far. More coming
This is
in.
interesting. See, you know, and so the other thing you'll find when you look at this and try to understand the kind of problem you're facing with change is that what might be a technical problem in one situation will be very much an adaptive problem in another. So the kid doesn't want to get on the bike. You know, the kid is scared of the road. It could be a lot of things, right? But this can be an adaptive challenge. Technically speaking, it's more of a technical challenge. But yeah, interesting to see where you guys kind of fall on that. Okay, right. So I'm not going to ask this one as a survey, but learning a language, most people would say it's probably mostly a technical challenge, but if I'm like addicted to Netflix, could be an adaptive one too. You might have an aversion to math and scared of math, and so that make it hard for you. Gosh, I would love to do a survey on this one. But if anybody here has tried to lose weight and you think it's an a technical challenge, mostly consider how many people don't succeed. And these plans work. I mean, they will work, but then they don't, right? Is this kind of resonating with some of what we experienced? Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure.
This is the one I really want to get the feedback from you guys on. I'd like to hear from as many as we can. So, trying to function or achieve the objectives of Agile in your organization. How much of a technical challenge is it versus an adaptive? So how technical is this challenge? I cannot wait to see. Yeah, let's look. By the way, this exercise I've just shown you, I do this now when I do my coaching leaders teams, coaching Agile for leaders. I do this exercise. I literally get them stand up and I have them move to one side of the room or the other. So it's kind of like you show like the one thing and then they kind of like bump, 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 and they all run over here. Then they go bump, 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 bump over here. And then, you know, they'll sort of stand in the middle. Then you get to this one and they usually plot more or less like this. Interesting, right?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Wow. I just look at from 7 to 10, 0. Just wow.
Why is this so surprising?
That's a good question. Why is this so surprising to us?
Very good point, yeah.
I think it's like losing weight, right? Because if you were to go read anything, what's it giving you? Technical information. So if we're having problems with our Agile deployment, right? What I'm going to do? Let's go run to get a book, right?
Let's teach another class. Let's implement another process. Let's call a community together, you know. And so consider this is what we're saying. All that stuff that the leaders are saying is fluffy in California science, that's where most of your opportunity is. Ouch. Ouch. Oh, I got to get a snap. Can you get a snapshot or something of that? I want that. That is so cool. You guys, this is neat. I love it. Thank you for that. Yeah, this is what I see. This is once I learned about this sort of way of looking at things, I started to see it all over. So we got these leaders that are basically going, there is no cat, you know, and there's a cat and the cat is eating them alive, but they sort of pretend there is no cat. So this is the streetlight effect, right? You know, we look at the place that we're comfortable looking. We look at the places that's easy to measure, and that's not where the opportunity is, right? So let's do this together. I want you to look at this. Just kind of savor it. And if you're a vegetarian, deal with it. But I'm going to look at this. And what are some words that kind of come up for you when you look at that?
Mouth watering.
Mouth watering. Yeah, right.
Savory.
Yum.
There's a lot of juicy coming in on the chat. Juicy is a key word here.
Yeah.
Cool.
Now, I want you to imagine for a second, hold on to that, just sort of that, and then you go to the doctor. And the doctor says to you, got a problem for you. You're going to be dead in 6 months to a year if you don't do something now. Wow. Wow, that's pretty serious. Now, here's the thing. I've got awareness now, don't I? Got awareness. I got that A part of ADKAR. And, I got a family. And I don't want to leave them behind. I care about these people in my life a lot. So now I've got the desire. Wow. And then I learned what I need to do so that I can deal with it. And so now I got the knowledge. So I got the awareness. I've got the desire. I've got the knowledge. There's plenty of things out there. So I've got these building blocks. But here's the deal. Here's the deal, guys. What'll happen is about 1 out of 3 people just don't follow this at all. 2 out of 3 pretty much do, but 1 out of 3 don't. And then when they did some studies and they would try to really explain and give them more information, and only 1 out of 7 would change. Only 1 out of 7. So think about this for a second. Wow, I'm doing what I'm doing in my organization today. You're telling me I need to do something different. You maybe kind of win me over and you tell me how, and guess what? We don't. So you're now at really what's going on with change, right? And facts don't change this. Graphs don't change this. So here's what's going on. I'm going to give you this. What happens when you transplant an organ? There's a system in your body that acts, and it acts aggressively. You put a new organ in somebody, and it goes away. So we have to do something to suppress that. And the exact same thing happens, not in a mushy way, but in a very physical way when you try to bring a new idea in. And it's a part of the brain called the limbic system. It literally is a structure in the brain, structures in the brain that function like this. They're there to keep you alive. It is there so that when something comes at you, when something is attacking you, way before that front part of your brain can ever even come online, it's acting, because if I don't, I get eaten. Bad things happen. The problem is that information can cause exactly the same response. Showing a burn down chart that isn't pretty, doing an agile assessment, who knows? Whatever it is, bad news arrives in our bodies and has the exact same effects as the tiger. It really does. This is actually an immune response. And we are much more optimized to avoid danger than we are to maximize reward. So that gets back to this loss aversion. We tend to maximize our current state in our equilibrium because dying is bad. I tend to operate that way. But so here's the deal. There's one more letter that's missing out of this. And these change models miss it. And it's this. It's the I. Because this is our immune system. This is literally what's happening. An idea shows up and it triggers in us something that causes this behavior, including the not using the right drugs or not following the right diet. This is what's going on. So this is the meat of the presentation. I wanted to give you the context. There are Keegan's work Robert Keegan, along with Lisa Leahy out of Harvard. They got the first 3 parts of this in the first 10 years, about 10 years ago. In the last few years, they've been building up the second section here. So this is what I'm going to literally give you is a step-by-step guide on how to deal with this. So isn't that kind of cool? The book is awful, by the way. I'm sorry. He just takes forever to get to a point, and maybe so do I. But let's walk through these steps. But they are literally something you can walk through and do. And there is training to do it. It creates what's called an immunity map worksheet, or sometimes they call it an immunity X-ray. So the step one is this, and I would like you guys to do this together. You know, just maybe on a piece of paper or even in your own head, think for a second, what is something that you're committed to that you're right now having a really tough time achieving? What is something that you really, really, really want, but it's just out of your reach? Okay, and I'm actually going to write it down myself. And I'm going to share with you mine. I'm going to go do this, and I'm going to be very authentic with you. Okay. I have a problem when I work with a team, peers, and I can be very, very aggressive. I can be very assertive in my approach to collaboration, and that damages some of the dynamics in the team. So just being transparent. So I'm committed to changing that. I really want to be different. Okay. So what you do is then step two, you say, what am I doing or not doing that conflicts with that commitment? So if you imagine the behavior that you want, you know, like I'm going to the gym 8 days a week, or, well, no, 7 days a week or 5 days or whatever it is. What is the actual behavior you're seeing, right? What are you actually doing that's not what you profess? So they call these competing behaviors. And so for me, I know what I'm doing is I talk, I dominate the conversation. I talk too much. My son shared with me listening into a conversation today that my voice gets an edge to it. I get sort of, you know, you can hear the annoyance in my voice. So you write down what the behavior is. By the way, I've done this with teams too. You can sit there and do this individually. You can talk about something the team shares, whatever, and you can walk this through with them together. Okay. Step three, I'm sorry, 1 second.
This is excellent. Even just writing these two things down, I'm going, wow, look at this.
Yeah, for sure.
Simply just writing it down.
Oh, just writing it down yeah, it makes it pop out at you. So the next one was, what would worry me? And this is, by the way, is very hard for people to do because you're asking them a sort of a backwards question. Instead of asking them about their commitment, you're asking about their competing commitment. So you're saying, what would I worry about if I stopped doing that behavior? Right. So if I were more quiet on the calls that I was on, or my tone was a little less aggressive, what would worry me about that? Right. What would I feel that might be scary? And I know what mine is. Mine is that my team will make a dumb decision. Right. They're going to make a dumb decision. And there's probably some deeper stuff, like maybe I won't be as valuable to the team. Maybe they'll think I'm not smart enough or something. I don't know. There's a second part. It's related. What would happen? What would be the actual consequence if my worry came true? So, you know, what would happen to me? You know, if they made a dumb decision, what would happen? You know, would I lose my job? You know, what is it that would go? Yeah. So to take a second and think about that. Now, this is the interesting thing. At this point, we've gotten to what's happening in your amygdala. You've gotten sort of like what is triggering you. This is now getting down to that sort of tiger thing. And by the way, this is really hard to access. This step is much harder than you think. This is where you're bringing your forebrain. You're trying to get your amygdala you're trying to access your amygdala, like feel that. And then you're trying to bring your forebrain back online. And to be honest with you, this step is really, really hard. But you say, if I make a commitment to stop doing that thing in step 3, that, I will not be, in step 3, I will not be able to. And what you're trying to do here is you're trying to surface the underlying truth, right? It's underneath that. It's even deeper than that one. It's the assumptions that inform that. So what danger would I see? So you've hit this. What would worry me? What would be the negative consequence? But what do I assume is true about that? Okay, what's an assumption I'm making about the world? So for me, an assumption might be that the other people on the team are not capable of making the decisions as well as I am, right? Or that if I'm not careful, I'll be overridden, or who knows, right? You're trying to get to some assumption. So this is giving you now access to literally the thing that is under the thinking. And this is the magic sauce. You cannot reason past the assumption. It's operating unconsciously. You don't have access to it. What you can do is, working together, usually with a coach or somebody, you can design a small experiment that feels safe for you, that would prove that hypothesis. Well, why don't you do this? Why don't you be completely silent on one call? Just be completely silent and see what happens. Oh, I can't do that. It's like, oh my God, it'll just go amazingly wrong. No, but just one call. Okay. So you try that, right? And so what happens is you have the literal physical experience of experiencing what your limbic system fears, right? And hopefully surviving it. So I'm going to give you guys now. So this looks like this, and you can Google that immunity map worksheet. But let me give you an example of one. I know we're coming up on the end of time, but I want to give you a quick example. I want to be more agile. I'll be accountable and remove our team's impediments. I had this real situation. This manager's like, yes, I'm going to help you guys, and yeah, I'm listening to you. And we wrote all these things down, and what happened? Well, he didn't go to the sprint reviews. He didn't follow up with the team. He didn't. He blamed all the productivity, even though we had those conversations, on lack of commitment. So he's doing all these behaviors that are, different than what his commitment was. So you go and you say, well, what is underneath that? And I don't really know. I'm guessing, but, maintaining status with peers. He's a new leader. He doesn't want to waste time. He's going to too many meetings, avoid disruptions, and, all this other kind of stuff. So what might be some of the big assumptions here? Maybe I don't have enough authority. Maybe, I'll lose status. Maybe if I push too hard, something bad will happen to me. It won't really help, So you get down to that level, and then you come up with your tests, right? So I'm going to give you one more, which is, and I'd actually like to maybe pause on this one and get some thoughts on the experiment. So who's trying to get TDD working in their teams or refactoring? Anybody kind of had that experience? I have a hell of a time with it.
Oh, Mark is raising his hand.
Yeah, go Mark.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things for me is it's one of those behaviors like you talked about where they start out and they'll do it like they'll do it for like one user story, and they're like, yeah, we get this. And then and say, yep, we're going to do this. We're going to add it to our definition of done that everything is written through TDD.
Yeah.
And then slowly, and it's a very slow thing you see is over time, all of a sudden, you start seeing that start coming by the wayside. And by the end, it's like, well, that's a nice to have in our definition of done. And then finally, wait, we're not doing TDD anymore. That's at least the pattern I've seen a couple times.
Yeah, right. You see that all the time. So if you were to do this now, imagine you're in a retro. You'd bring up the first part because you maybe did this. Then you would do this. You'd actually literally write what literally they're doing. Don't even interpret it, right? We're like you said, we aren't following a definition down. We're not mob programming. We're not pairing. We write the test after. We don't, whatever it is. And this is the exercise then you jump into, because that part will go quick, is usually you'll start to surface what's really going on with them, starting to surface. They're afraid of going slow, status in the team, who knows, right? Then you go and you say, well, what are your assumptions? Well, writing this will slow me down. Really? Well, what would happen if you slowed down? Oh gosh, I might not get promoted. You've got to get to this level because they're not conscious of it. See, that's the thing that we don't get, is we don't even have access to this consciously, most of us. That person who won't take the drugs for their condition. So what would be maybe a baby test you might run? I'd love to. So Mark can just kind of, I don't want to throw anybody on the bus here, but what would you try now? What was an experiment that they could try? Yeah.
Oh, that's a good one. Like, I could see, kind of going through this, like, it could be something like, let's write one test, what's one thing we can do? Or in this case, if it's the concern is like, we're slowing down and we might be, it might hurt us. We might say, all right, well, let's, what if we took one less, if we normally work at like 30 story points. Well, we took one less story point this sprint, and then from there we just put that into writing a test. Let's see what happens if we did that.
Right, and then in your retro, you just get them to come up with that baby step, right? So I want to. I know we're almost out of time, and I apologize for maybe putting too much in this. Any last? So what's coming up? Isaac, on the board.
Yeah, no, I'm just getting a lot of, I'm not getting a lot of questions coming through, but definitely a lot of support and agreement of, yes, this makes sense. Yes, I like the direction. I'm experiencing that. I've been there. So I'm definitely getting a lot of resonance with what you're saying. It's reflecting with a lot of people very well.
Yeah, what resonated for me was you cannot reason past the assumption. And when you said those words, I was like, yeah, you can't reason past your assumptions. So let's dig in. So I think it's going to be great. Very, very useful construct for everybody.
Cool. I will say, just like any other change, applying this and knowing about this is not the same as getting the value from it. So I have found I tend to use this. I'll just be transparent. I tend to use this when I'm really dealing with a super tough problem. I don't overuse it because it's just gets to be another thing. But anyway, I hope that you guys can solve this problem and get really rich because we need it. But I do think it's going to be a multifaceted problem. So thank you so much for
Thanks for sharing your knowledge and experience. Thank you so much.
Yes, Jay, thank you. This has been great. A lot of meat here to think about how we respond and how others respond. I appreciate your practical advice. I just want to say to everybody, you can check us out at coachingagilejourneys.com. We've got our upcoming events there. You can register for new ones. Also, keep an eye out for Agile cocktails. Those are just informal get-togethers where we get together and just talk about a topic. And so if you're interested in one of those or want to follow up with that, look us up on coachingagilejourneys.com. You can get a hold of one of us, the co-hosts, on the About page. Look us up on LinkedIn or something and give us a shout. We look forward to more great conversations. And again, Jay, thank you so much for taking the time to share this with us today. It's been awesome.
Thank you, guys. I'm looking forward to joining in with the rest of you guys in future meetings too. So
we would love to see it. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your day. The recording will be up on coachingagilejourneys.com very soon. Have a great one. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thanks.